Let us begin today, friends, with some of the views regarding the Foucault's post structuralism. As we have seen in the last lectures also, that Foucault had a profound influences on and resonances in cultural theory, psychoanalysis, and literary studies also. Foucault demonstrated how the subject, the sick, the insane, the child, the criminal, how these subjects, how the subject is constituted within the discourse. And Foucault's work might be seen as the epitome of post structural theory. In this post structuralist view, the subject is not coherent self. The subject does not contain an essence. Subjects inert themselves into the roles and subject positions already available to them in the discourses. Therefore, the subject is constructed within discourses which bestow upon him an identity, a name, a gender. Discourses such as biology, medicine, law, history, science, and arts. And as we have seen the whole discussion about Foucault's understanding of discourses, knowledge, and power, we have seen that the subject is never stable. It is constantly reconstituted within the discourses. What post structuralism proposes is that the subject is a social construction. There is no innate or natural self that can exist outside of the discourse. If we consider biology as a discourse, this constructs a material body, subject of nerves, blood vessels, and the various organs, and accordingly all the diseases. Same as the law of discourse, the law of discourse, law as discourse, constructs the human as one who has followed a particular or who has rights and his responsibilities. The law of law as discourse suggests humans. What are their rights and what are their responsibilities and what will happen if they did not fulfill their responsibilities. We have seen history as discourse. It constructs the human, because human is the subject there, as one who has followed a particular trajectory in what a history terms it as evolution or development. Psychology, philosophy, And psychoanalysis as discourses constructs human psyche and self as set of values, behavioral pattern, predispositions, eccentricities. So these discourses operate through language. And if you see very carefully, according to Chris Whedon, the meaning of the existing structure of social institutions, as much as the structures themselves and the subject positions which they offer their subjects, is a site of political struggle. A type of political struggle is a site of political struggle, waged mainly in language. In the form of language, it has been kept always. So when any subject enters into the discourse, it tries to build up its own identity. And if you see, building on these assumptions that the structure builds its identity once it is incorporated into the discourses. Building on these assumptions derived from post structuralism, various thinkers developed the theories of subject within the discourse and demonstrates how subject accept and resist the positions, their own positions. If you see the very famous, as we have yesterday discussed about the things, that in the postmodern understanding, because yesterday, as I said to you, that postmodernism is a philosophical and cultural theory. And if you see that the thinkers and theorists which are being part of postmodernism, they have a very strong post structuralist stance in it. And if you see very carefully, my friends, because as I said to you, and as we have right now mentioned one of the very famous quote by Chris Whedon, that the meanings of existing structure of social institutions is actually a site of political struggle. And if you want to look at it, you can see how all those things has been created, developed, and how the thinkers and theorists of postmodern phase, taking the stance of post-structuralism into itself, they are pointing out, they are giving us the whole understanding. If you see very carefully, the idea of simulation, if you try to find out the post-structural aspects, these are the few ideas I'm giving to you. If you look out to these ideas, you will be able to understand that how these thinkers have focused on making the whole understanding of post-structuralism and applying this post-structuralism in their own concern, in their own way. Now, considering post-structuralism, keeping deconstruction somehow out of the debate for a long time, always makes us to get little bit difficult for understanding of post-structuralism. So when we start of deconstruction in the next week, they are continuing the discussion of post-structuralism in a sense, because deconstruction is one of the major theories of post-structuralism. Now, if you see certain postmodern thinkers, as yesterday I have mentioned it very categorically, postmodern thinkers and theorists who carried a strong post-structuralist stance to put out their own theoretical perspective, which we can in detailed study in postmodernism. When the topic of postmodernism appears in research methodology, you can study it very categorically there. But if you see, there are certain postmodern thinker, and as I said, that postmodernism is always suspicious of truth, and it focuses on the production of truth in language and narrative. The very prominent postmodern thinker that took a post-structuralist stance in its theory that it has developed is Jean Baudrillard. Jean Baudrillard, who developed a notion of simulacra, SIMULACRA. This notion of simulacra is linked to the idea of hyperreality. What is the hyperreal? We know about real, but we don't know about hyperreal. Hyperreal is beyond reality. It is actually not real, but it is trying to project itself as real. Baudrillard's interests, his interest lies in structures like Disney World, television, and photography, where he suggests that we are so caught up in image and the copies of that image, because those copies of that particular image do not provide us to access any reality beyond that image. Please understand this idea. This is the post-structuralist stance that he has. Now here you cannot find out any other meaning. It is restricting your imaginary capacity. The representation that we used to find out in the images that we see. Because what Jawahar Virat said, that the image bears no relation to any reality whatever. It is a pure simulacrum. That is what Jawahar Virat said. Because what we see in Disneyland, it is glossy, it is glamorized visual representation of something whose original we will never know. Look at the characters developed by the Disney. You will not find such a beautiful mouse, Mickey Mouse. You will not find such a beautiful duck, Donald Duck. You cannot think, even you can move, you cannot able to see what is the original, from where this idea came from. If you see in Indian context, the paintings of Raja Ravi Verma, Raja Ravi Verma's paintings in calendars, or Picasso's paintings, or other artists who made the paintings in mass, in popular cultural forms. Because we don't have access to the original. We are looking to the image. We are accessing to these great works through images only. We will never see the original work at all. If I say in other words, for us, copy or image serves as the original one. Baudrillard further mentions that copies and further reproductions of the great works are made from the copies only. Copies, then the copy of the copy, copy of the copy, copy of the copy. What is the original work? Where is the original work? What we have always nowadays are copies of copies. That you find a Che Guevara t-shirts. Ask anyone who is wearing Che Guevara's t-shirt. Who is Che Guevara? Have you seen original? They say, no, we don't know that. We have seen the poster only. Or Nike's swoosh. Nike's that swoosh on any local manufactured shoes saying that this is Nike. You don't know what original Nike is, how original Nike is. You don't know original Nike. We consider the swoosh appeared on the shoes means it is original. We believe in clones. As Jawahar said, postmodernity is characterized by this endless circulation of copies. There is endless circulation of copies. Signs are not exchanged for objects or even meanings. Remember what structuralism Saussure talked about. Signs are having its own meaning as per the context. But now signs are not exchanged for objects or even meanings. The traditional function of signs, if you remember, they stood in for certain object. They were symbols for certain objects. They never again exchanging for what is real. They're exchanging in itself. Thus, you will find out the image, the copy, the photograph, it constitute our knowledge of reality. Because we cannot know anything other than the image. Nowadays, it happens more in the way of social media. You believe in image. This is what Baudrillard called as simulation, where the process of image making and the copies and the reflections are more important than the real. We started to believe in that copy. Nowadays, you see that we firmly believe on that copies, the image that is coming in front of us. The various fake videos, the photographs appearing on all sorts of social medias. And we started to believe, we never find out what real in it. This is how it started to take control of the things together. It is getting more important than real because sometimes the real is not present there. The real is not there. It is fabricated. It is constructed as real in front of you. And what Baudrillard writes is that there is an escalation of the true, of the lived experience, a resurrection of the figurative, where the object and substance have already disappeared. What you consider as real is not real in itself, it is the image or copy of something. And it reached up to such a level that we cannot distinguish between the real and the copy anymore. Thus, you can say the reality of war for us is the image. You haven't seen any war, you don't know what exactly war means by. And that's why Jean Baudrillard objected the Kuwait War, which was fought between America attacked Iraq, and that was made live to the audiences across the world in 1990. At that time, Jean Baudrillard said it is not a real war, it is an image created on the screen. Because nobody knows what real war is. Because the image making of the war itself is so realistic, with the help of superior technology and embedded journalists who analyze that in such a way that we started to immediately believe that this is the war. That you started to believe on that screen. When the World Trade Center in America in 2001, September 9/11, that America used to say always, when the Twin Towers fell, one of the comments recorded at that time was It is like the Independence Day. It was the movie Independence Day. If you see very carefully, there is a movie Independence Day in Hollywood where all the buildings are falling and everything is getting destroyed. And when people saw that building is falling in New York, they think that it is like a movie because we started to believe in this in those screen images rather than real images. And that's why you can understand the same thing that the very language of horror is cinematic. Remember the attack on Mumbai on 26th November. We call it 26/11. Tukaram Omre, the police constable, Ajmal Kasab, the terrorist. You know all those sequences. Now, when people saw that image that from a helicopter, the commandos are coming down and they are killing all those things, most of the people thought that it is something like a commando action because we haven't seen commando action real in a real sense. So we are following that screen image of commando action. Most of them felt that it is what the real thing is because this has created an impression. So what Baudrillard is painstakingly developing here is the theory of representation. And this theory of representation is a part of post-structural studies. He suggests that nothing exists outside a representation. The hyperreal is this world of simulation and excessive science and is the only real world we will ever know. That we know that is the only real world. Other world we don't know. Even we do not consume objects, but the sign of that objects. This is what Baudrillard terms as implosion, that is collapse of meaning. Collapse of meaning in the age of empty signs or signs without reference for us. Every sign merely refer to other sign because you don't have original as such to you. Baudrillard attributes this simulation culture to the excessive influence of the media. Please understand this, and this is how we are living in this world today. That's why post-structuralism, postmodernism is the most relevant theories of today's life. You need to understand it as a students of literature. No science will able to tell you this kind of understanding of social understanding of life as such. The whole simulation culture is having an excessive influence of media, and in media especially television and social media and screen cultures, various screen cultures, because we see the world through this media only. You're not looking at the world from your own naked eyes, you are looking at the screen with your eyes. What is shown on the screen, as I said, without knowing whether that is correct or incorrect or right or wrong, we don't bother even to think about it. Started to consider it as truth, real, And this simulation culture helps most of the people or most of the political parties in the world to rule over. The best example is of the last election of United States of America, where Donald Trump became the president at that time. Images. We see the world through the media. Our appraisal, our interpretation of reality is always influenced by films, always influenced by media representation, an image of reality, which is, you can point out that shown on the screen. The attack of 26/11 or the falling of the Twin Towers of World Trade Center or any terrorist attack that we used to watch it on television. And the experiences which you are getting out of it are those experiences which are not suitable. Those experiences are not giving you a sort of experience that you are expecting it to get. And there's a Baudrillard links all these things to urban capitalism. Now, please understand this thing very carefully, my friends, in today's condition that we are living in. Who is operating you? The media house is controlled by one family. If I take the example of India, 17 channels, 17 media houses in India were controlled by one family. And what this media wants to show, they will show their own perception, they will show their own understanding, they will show their own view. And once you see it for a long time, you started to believe on it. And that's why Baudrillard, I'm not saying that. Jean Baudrillard mentioning it in his theory of, you can say, theory of representation. It is like urban capitalism, where capitalists' strategies involve in concealing the inequalities of society behind the images of production. Nowadays, a common thing is going on in discussion with most of the people. Somehow you will see on the social medias also that someone will write down a post that, have you seen any beggar is dying due to corona? If beggar is dying, who is going to know that he is beggar dying of corona? Have you ever seen that a beggar dying across the street? Have you stopped there and watched him, asked him that, okay, why you are doing, what do you want? Have you asked? No, you never ask, you never bother about it. So who will represent it? You have a big superstar leader, a big person who is whose influence is in the society. If he admits in the hospital for his regular checkup, you will get a news continuous that he is admitted in the hospital. He is admitted in the hospital. This is what the urban capitalist Jean Baudrillard is pointing out. He's saying that they want to simply conceal, to hide the inequalities of the societies behind the images of production, prosperity, efficiency. And consumer capitalism, we are the victims of that consumer capitalism. Consumer capitalism takes this a step further, where we can only know the finished product. We don't know how that product is. We know about only the product. finished product kept into the market, put it on the showcase. We will never know where the product comes from, the process of production or distribution. You have to tell them time and again that please see whether it is expired or not, because we don't bother to see it. Once it is kept on the in the market on the showcase, we believe that it is true, it is real, it is correct, it is absolutely right. We never bother to question. This is consumer capitalism. We consume mango drink. In urban India, you will find out, if you ask any child in urban India or any person in urban India how the mango grows, he will not be able to know. Because our knowledge of mango is only through the sign or the representation of the mango on the bottle. If you ask any child, if you give now the season of mango will come within a couple of weeks. If you give original mango to any small kid, he will say, why to eat mango? I'll drink fruity directly. Who will look at the mango whether it is really sweet or not, or how to make it and how to take the pulp out of it? Why I should work? I'll get a ready-made drink for that. The mango on that particular maza is good, because we believe in that particular sign. We never believe in the original mango kept there. This is how our understanding of certain things has been developed, and that's why Jean Baudrillard says that this is what a consumer capitalism and urban capitalism, which is out product of theory of representations. Now, if you see this, what Jean Baudrillard is talking about, another important thinker, Gilles Deleuze, in his very famous book in 1994, Difference and Repetition, he extends Baudrillard's notion of simulacra, but also contests it. Baudrillard says, and as I've told you, that there is no possibility of distinguishing between real and the virtual, the original and the copy. There is no possibility of distinguishing. How will you distinguish between real and virtual? We are living in virtual world today. You are looking at a virtual screen to me. You are attending the lectures or virtual lectures. Online is a mode of virtuality. It is not real. Okay, I'm not making the background, because it gives an option, change the background. You can make a beautiful background of a trees and beautiful scenery. A water is falling from behind me, and I can again, and you look at the images behind me. In real, I'm not sitting there. So you cannot distinguish between real and virtual. This is what Jean Baudrillard proposes, talks about. And Deleuze, Deleuze, the thinker, he argues that this is a false dichotomy, because why it is false dichotomy? Why it is false dichotomy? Because very simply, the original is itself a copy. Because the original is not original, it becomes a copy. You are believing in a copy. The actual or real building which you want to construct is the idea. You have an empty space, you want to construct your own house, so you try to have an idea about how your house will look like. But the idea of building is based on an image in builder's eye or mind. You have so many things. You have to tell it that, okay, if you go to any architect and you ask the architect, okay, I want to make my house. He said, okay, what do you want? What are the things you expect? You can say that I'm this much members are in my family and this is what we require. So I said, okay, I'll prepare, I will design. Now you are not designing your own house. Architect is designing your house. The image is in the eyes of that architect. He imagines that, okay, this is how this house looks like because these are the requirements of these people. And how we recognize our building? We need to have a prior image of the building. He gives a prior image that, okay, this will look like this. And we started to believe in that image instead of looking at the real. Thus, Deleuze sees the actual as actual virtual. Nowadays, in a computer, if you want to choose a color, you can put your building on the picture of building on the screen and mark certain things and ask them to color it. They will show how your building will look like after the color. Now you need not put it original color there. See to it that how will it look like, and then you can use it. So, you are believing in actual virtual, where everything real has a potential to become virtual, to produce its own images. If you see very carefully, Deleuze is here responding to Plato's argument. Plato has made an argument in his very famous book called The Republic. What he said into that book, what is Plato's argument? That there exists a true model. There is some true model. There is an ideal model somewhere of which we see copies only. We are copying it. That's why he said everything existed in this world is thrice away from reality, not twice, thrice away from reality. Because what you get is not it in its original form. The thing which is, for example, Plato gives this example in his Republic, saying that if you want to have a table, there is an ideal model of table somewhere. So the artist imagines about that table. That is the first copy. He imagines about that table. The carpenter imagines about that table, that it should have 4 legs and the top. A very simple thing I'm talking about. So he imagines. That is a copy. He draws it. Okay, this is how it has to be constructed. That is the second one. And when he made it exactly, it is the third one. So what original is, you don't know. You believe in this copy. You think it is original. This is the argument of Plato. And there Plato distinguishes between good and bad copies. For the good copy, Plato called it as icon, Eikon. That's a Greek term. Okay. Otherwise, we'll say, sir, you are making a spelling mistake. Icon is Icon. So there's an English spelling. I'm talking about Greek word he has used. Icon, Eikon. This is for good copy. And what is for bad copy? Bad copy for bad copy, he termed it as phantasma. Or you can say simulacrum. Phantasma. 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 Icon, a good copy that try to resemble the original model as it is. You want to show the original model as it is. Whereas phantasma or simulacrum is a superficial resemblance of that ideal. That is what Plato said. Deleuze argues that Plato finds simulacrum frightening because they have no fixed identity. Their identity is slippery, ephemeral, or illusory. They resemble the original, but the resemblance is itself illusion. There is no depth or inner essence that we call it as an original. No, we cannot say it as an original. It is simulacrum. So Deleuze shift was in treating the actual or the real as possessing the ability to become virtual. You yourself doesn't like real. Do we? No, we don't like ourselves in the real sense. What we used to do, we used to take a photograph, selfies. Look at how selfies have been modified. There are so many options in your mobile phones to make your color fair, you make your eyes beautiful, you can change the whole face. What you look like in a virtual picture, there you are not like. We used to say in a very simple thing that the image on your Aadhaar card is the real one. The image in your selfies in your mobile phones is not real one. It is simulacrum. And what Deleuze is saying that there is a shift in treating the actual or the real as possessing the ability to become virtual. And he argued that we cannot discern the virtual potential in any building or anything real until it has become image. Until it appears in the form of image, we don't like it, we don't consider it as a real. That is the potential of the real to become virtual. That thing we like, the potential of the real which can convert it into virtual, those things we like very much. Because virtual is not visible to us in real. The process of actual virtual, of the inherent potential for all, real to become virtual, real to become virtual, that is what Deleuze calls it as simulation. Simulacrum is the power of anything to become something else, to become an image, to be other than actual. In simple words, we can say, my friends, that simulacrum is the power of actual to become virtual. This is how you will find out. Deleuze has pointed out about his theories of representation that Baudrillard has shown to us. Now, if you see very carefully, my friends, that post-structuralism tries to describe the concept, the idea that is shown by Deleuze is following the post-structuralist thinking. The post-structuralist thinking about authority, power, and space. It deterritorializes because now you have boundaries, but when you make the things for virtual world, there are no boundaries, there is no world. That's why we used to say that the world is a global village, because we have the whole process available on virtual world, and virtual world is boundaryless. There is no restriction of any territory. Deterritorialization is the process through which the machine becomes something than itself. Mobile, for example. The machine, if you miss a mobile for a day, you will feel very difficult to survive. A series of connections, intersections, assemblage, negotiations, because it has no center self, it has continuous series. Because the self in this lies open. And this is what the post structuralist thinking you will find out, carried in various ideas that you will find it in the theories of Baudrillard or Deleuze, because this is a typical post structuralist notion where subject is a site of forces rather than stability. As I said in Foucaultian term, that subject is not stable. Subject is always changing. It is continuously changing for itself. And that's why Deleuze and Guattari, the another thinker, concerns with the question of control, regimentations, and limitations. And that's why you will find out, my friends, that post-structuralism, it is challenging all the understanding, all the thinking of various discourses. It has affected literature very well. It is affected literature because language is the basic source of communicating all the things. And that's why you will find out that the great literature would be minor because its language would be foreign. The language which you want to use changes its identity. And that's why you will find out, my friends, that post structuralism challenges the whole concept of linguistic identity that structuralism proposes. We'll continue with the discussion tomorrow, and we will find out some difference and what the post-structuralist critique do. We'll talk about those things, and even I said to you that we have talked about certain diagram in structuralism, comparing it with liberal humanism. The same sort of diagram we will have in tomorrow's lecture. And then I'll simply put you certain important things of post-structuralism with which we will conclude the second unit of our studies. And from Monday onwards, we'll start with deconstruction. So tomorrow will be the last lecture on so-called post-structuralism, because post-structuralism will not be complete in a sense if we don't understand deconstruction, because deconstruction is one of the most important aspects of post-structuralism. In Deleuzian term, we can say we are virtually completing post-structuralism tomorrow, but we are continuing it with deconstruction. Okay, so tomorrow at 10:30 we will meet and we will continue the discussion of post-structuralism.